Jewish audio on Chabad.org.
Good morning. Welcome. Today we begin the portion of Pinchas, page 268, verse 10 in the book we use here, chapter 25, verse 10. In order to properly follow the narrative and the sequence of what we're about to learn here, we have to back up a little bit to the end of yesterday's portion. After Bilam failed in his mission to curse the children of Israel, instead, 4 consecutive times he was forced to bless the Jewish people. He came up with a brilliant piece of advice. He said that the God of Israel despises decadence and immodesty. And therefore, he encouraged the Midianite women, the Midianite girls, to go and trap the Jewish men, enticing them to engage in harlotry, causing their spirituality to fall. But in order to agree to engage in harlotry with the young Jewish men, they first forced them as a condition to also engage in idol worship, worshiping the idol Baal. So before you know it, in no time at all, following the advice of Bilam, the entire young generation and some not so young of the children of Israel became steeped in decadence and immorality. And the leader of this entire movement was the head of the tribe of Shimon, Zimri ben Solu. And he engaged in immorality publicly with a princess of the people of Midian. And things spun very quickly out of control. He approached Moshe publicly and said to Moshe, "Is this okay? Can I consort with this Midianite princess?" And Moshe said, "Of course, it's not okay. It's contrary to Torah. The Torah was given at Mount Sinai prohibiting this." And so Zimri challenged Moshe and said, "In that case, who permitted you to marry your wife, Zipporah, who's also a Midianite?" The difference, of course, was that Moshe married Zipporah many years before the Torah was given. At the time that the Torah was given, everyone became a Jew together at Mount Sinai, all those who had married into the children of Israel. So that was an irrational argument. And suddenly things spun out of control. No one knew what to do. A plague developed. And Pinchas, the son of Elazar, the son of Aharon, went and speared Zimri ben Solu together with the Midianite princess as they were engaged in this act, killed them, and the plague ceased. And this is what we learned at the end of yesterday's Torah portion. 24,000 Jews perished in that plague. And now we go back to today's Torah portion, chapter 25, verse 10, and we learn the rest of the story. Vaydaber Hashem el Moshe leimor, and God spoke to Moshe, saying, Pinchas ben Elazar ben Aharon HaKohen, Pinchas, the son of Elazar, the son of Aharon, the Kohen, don't think he did something bad, because this was the big debate. Did he act out of anger? Did he act in an incorrect, inappropriate manner? Or did he do a wonderful thing? So Hashem makes a declaration to Moshe that Pinchas did the right thing. Heshiv es chamosi, he turned my wrath away, me'al b'nei Yisrael, from the children of Israel. Bekanei es kinosi b'seicham, when he took my position of jealousy within them, he stopped this movement towards just anything goes. as B'nai Yisrael b'kinosi, because of what Pinchas did in killing Zimri and the princess, he stopped the plague. Otherwise, the entire children of Israel could have been consumed in, says God, my jealousness. So understand for the record that what Pinchas did, God says, was a good thing. Rashi, Pinchas ben Elazar, ben Aharon HaKohen, why is this declaration made? Because the tribes of Israel were mocking Pinchas. And they said, Hari'isem ben Puti zeh, do you see this son of Puti? Why did they refer to him as son of Puti? Because Pinchas's mother was a descendant both of Yisro as well as of Yosef, which means his mother's mother and his mother's father. One came from Yisro and one came from Yosef. So they said about him, Hari'isem ben Puti zeh, did you see this son of Puti? Shepitem avi imei agolam la'avedazara. Why did they call him son of Puti? Because his mother's father, referring to Jethro, Yisro, who used to be an idolatrous priest. So his grandfather fattened calves, gestoppt Kalben, for idolatry, and now he's becoming a zealot. The Horag Nisi Shevet mi Yisrael, and this guy went and killed a governor of a tribe of Israel. Another interpretation is that this is a descendant of Yosef HaTzadik, who, when his evil inclination came to him and said, why don't you sin with Potiphar's wife, he said to his evil inclination, stuff it. Pitpeit beyitzrei. He was able to reject the temptations presented by his own evil inclination. Therefore, Bo HaKosov, along comes the verse, V'yichasei achar Aharon, and traces his genealogy not to Yisro, but says he is a descendant of Aharon. What was Aharon known for? Loving peace and pursuing peace, that what he did was not an irrational act of vengeance, but it was a great mitzvah which stopped the whole process of what was happening within the Jewish people at that time. When he avenged my revenge, when he displayed the anger that I, rightfully God says, should have displayed. The word chino, one who takes vengeance, importment in Old French. The Baal HaTurim says, Heishiv es chamosi me'al, these words have the numerical value, Zehu es hamalach shel af v'shel chema, the angel of wrath. We also need to bear in mind something which our sages teach us. There's a famous teaching, Pinchas zu Eliyahu, or Ze Eliyahu, that the soul of Pinchas ascended and became the soul of Elijah the prophet. So that Pinchas had a very lofty soul, and later he was one of the same as Elijah the prophet, whose soul ascended to heaven while his body was here on earth and lives as an angel and will come to inform us of the coming of Mashiach, so that Pinchas was not just a regular guy. We'll talk about this later. Verse 12, Lachein, therefore, Emer, say, let it be said, Hineni Neisen Leyas Brisi Sholem. I am hereby presenting to him, to Pinchas, God says, I'm presenting to Pinchas my covenant of peace. As Brisi Sholem, Shetehele LeBris Sholem, it should be for him a covenant of peace. Ka'odam Amachzik Teva, like somebody who is thankful, Bachanois, and is appreciative. L'misha Eisi Teva, to someone who does good for him. Avkan, so also Perush VeHaKadosh Baruch Hu, Shleimeis of God is extending his peace to Pinchas, as we used to say back in the 60s. Peace, brother. For those of you who are old enough to remember. Now, it's interesting. We look at the last word in verse 12, shalom, and you see that the vav is cut. In fact, there's a little note, vav ktia. The vav is cut. It is as if it would say, brisi shlim. And there are various teachings that the vav becomes a yud. I give him the 10 gifts. Within the 24 gifts of the priesthood, we learned earlier that there are 10 in the holy temple, in the Beis Hamikdash. Another interpretation, Pinchas is Eliyahu. Eliyahu is written missing a vav in 10 places. Yaakov is written with an extra vav in 10 places. Yaakov took the vav of Eliyahu for collateral to make sure that Eliyahu will come and inform the Jewish people that Mashiach is coming. And this is the idea of Brisi Sholom. Says the Baal HaTurim, the word Sholom has the numerical value of Zehu HaMashiach, that this would be Mashiach. Now the Baal HaTurim says, who was Zimri ben Solu? We learned earlier that the head of the tribe of Shimon was Shlumiel ben Surishadai. Our sages say that Shlumiel was the same as Zimri ben Solo. He's not the one from Shlomiel, Shlomazel. Shlumiel ben Surishadai was Zimri ben Solo, and they are one of the same. And the Torah did not want to tell us clearly that this was the head of the tribe of Shimon, but he was the governor of the tribe of Shimon, which is why this whole story was such a difficult story, because he was such an important guy. As it relates to Shlomiel and Shlomazel, the old joke is that what's the difference between a Shlomiel and a Shlomazel? The Shlomiel spills the soup on the Shlomazel, and the Nudnik wants to know what kind of soup it was. Now, as we're about to learn, there's another important detail here. And that is, when God came to Aaron, the high priest, and said, I give you and your children the gift of priesthood, Pinchas missed out on that gift of priesthood due to a technicality. What was the technicality? He was already born. Yet God did not say, and all your descendants after you. He didn't say you, your grandchildren. He said, you and your children, and those to be born to them. Pinchas was not you. He was not your children. And he was not those to be born to them. He was a child already born. So technically, due to a technicality, Pinchas missed out on becoming a Kohen. His reward now is, because of what he does, that he is, in a belated manner, crowned with the Keser Kahuna, with the crown of priesthood. He's given the privilege of being a Kohen. 13. V'hoi solo, and there shall be to him, or the Zaro Achrov, and for his seed forever after him, Beris, a covenant, Kehunas Olam, of eternal, everlasting priesthood, Tachas, because Asher Kine Lelekov, because he displayed jealousy on behalf of God, Vayechaper, he brought atonement, Al Bnei Yisrael, to all of the children of Israel. His act was an act ultimately of kindness. V'hoisa loy Rashi 13, Berisi Zeis, this covenant of mine, Beris Kehunas Olam. Sh'af al pi shekvar nitna kehuna lezare shel Aaron. What is going on here? God is making Pinchas a Kohen. Wasn't Pinchas born a Kohen? No, even though the priesthood was already given to the seed of Aaron. Nitna el Aaron one of shinim shchuim miladeiresayim shelido achar hi moshchusan. What I just explained, that the priesthood was only given to Aaron and his sons, and to those who would be born from them after they were anointed. But Pinchas, who was born before that, was not anointed at the time. The Klal Kahuna Adkan did not enter into the category of priesthood up to this point. It says specifically in the Talmud tractate Zvachim, page 101, that Pinchas did not become a Kohen until after the story with Zimri. Leilei kol for his God, b'shvil lekol for the sake of his God. Kamei hamakana atalivi kinesi l'tzion b'shvil tzion for. Now he gives the information exactly who's who, because it was a little iffy before. V'shem ish Yisrael Hamukah, the name of the Jewish man who was smitten, Asher Hukah, who was slain as Hamidjonis, with this Midianite, Zimri ben Soli, Zimru, the son of Solu. Nisi base of, he was the head of the father's household, La Shimoni of the tribe of Shimon. V'shem ish Yisrael, the gamer, b'makam sheyiches es atzadik l'shevach. Just as sometimes the Torah gives us the genealogy and the lineage of the righteous for praise, yiches es harosh l'gnai, he tells us the lineage and the genealogy of the wicked person for shame. Nisi base of La Shimoni, Rashi gives us the simple interpretation that this was one of the junior leaders of the tribe of Shimon. One of the 5 houses of Shimon. Davarachar, another meaning, to let you know the praiseworthiness of Pinchas, even though Zimri ben Soli was a leader and a prince, he didn't restrain himself from taking this position as an act of jealousness, avoiding the desecration of Hashem's name, because it's not just that Zimri went and consorted with a Midianite woman. That's not what Pinchas was avenging. Zimri went and consorted with a Midianite woman. It's his problem. What happened here is this was a public display of arrogance, challenging everything Judaism stood for, challenging it because many years earlier Moshe had, rightfully so, married a Midianite, saying that the whole boundary and barrier of separation within marriage of Jew and non-Jew is irrelevant, and anybody can do what they please. This was a public display of challenge against God and Moshe and Israel and Judaism and Torah. That's why Pinchas did what he did. And Moshe couldn't say anything. Nobody knew what to do. Moshe didn't know what to do. Aaron didn't know what to do. And Pinchas was inspired to take this position, as we learned in yesterday's portion, and here he's being complimented and blessed for it. Therefore, to tell us how great Pinchas was, that he didn't hesitate to take this position, even though he was challenging a very important person. The Torah tells us who the person was and how important they were. He was either one of 5 families, the head of one of 5 families of Shimon, or according to the oral law, some interpretations in the oral law, and the Balaturim, he was the head of Shimon. Now, who was this woman? She was also a VIP. She was a Midianite princess. Here we see that the Midianite royalty sent their own daughters out to act as harlots. That's how much there was hatred to the children of Israel. The Shem Hoisha Hamukah, in the name of the woman who was smitten, Hamidjonis the Midianite, her name was Cosbi, the daughter of Tzur, Rosh Umay's base of, who was Tzur. He was one of the head of the nations of the father's households. There were 5 of them. There were 5 households, and he was one of them. In Midian, who? That's who he was. 15, Rashi, V'shemo Yishamukah Leidiacha, to inform you, Sinosam, the hatred, Shal Midyanim of the Midianites. Kiru Bas Melech, they offered up a princess, Liznus, into harlotry, into prostitution, only Kidei Lahachti Es Yisrael, because this is what Bilam advised them, would bring the children of Israel down. He said all of the curses in the world can't affect the Jewish people unless they lose their spiritual standing, and that causes them to become vulnerable. Reish Umeis Echad Mechameshes Malchei Midian. He was one of the 5 kings or princes of Midian, as it says in Bamidbar 31, a little later. Es Evi Ves Rekem Ves Tzur. Cosbi was the daughter of Tzur. The Huay Yachasher Mikulam. Cosbi was the most prominent of all of these princes. Shenem Reish Umeis, he was the head of the people. Well, in that case, why was he enumerated third? Well, being that he conducted himself in a shameful way, to send his daughter out into harlotry. Therefore, the Torah enumerates him as number 3 because he doesn't deserve the respect. How does a person treat their daughter like that, sending their daughter into harlotry just to avenge a nation you don't like? Base of Chamisha Botei Oves Hoyle Midyon. There were 5 princely families in Midyon. Ephah, Va'ephah, V'chanech, Va'avido, Ve'eldo, V'zeh Hoye Melech La'achad Mehem, and he was a king of one of them. So there were like 5 tribes, and he was the head of one of these tribes. Even in many countries these days, you have independent tribes. That's why it's so hard to make peace in certain countries, because there is no clear government. This one is the head of this tribe, and this one is the head of this tribe. You have to try and create a federation amongst them, and not always is it possible. Verse 16. So now that story has come to an end, the problem now is that the Midianite people brought a terrific balagan. They created a mess within the ranks of the Jewish people. We just learned that because of this story, 24,000 people perished, all because the Midianites descended upon the Jewish people, sending their daughters in as harlots and causing the Jewish people to become decadent. So now, Vaydaber Hashem el Moshe Lemar, Hashem speaks to Moshe saying, Soror es ha-Midyonim, you have to harass the Midianites, vengeance. You can't let this go. V'hikisem esam, you must smite them. Grammatically, 17, Rashi says the word soror is present tense. Kimo zochar shomar loshen hova aleichem la'ayev estem. You must hate them. You can't just say, I'm going to forgive and forget. This is not a simple thing. The Midianites didn't have a real reason to do this. They did it out of pure hatred, and therefore you must go in and deal with the Midianites. And this is the sacred war of the children of Israel against Midian. It was actually a miraculous war, because as we're about to learn, there may not have been another war in history where the children of Israel didn't even lose one man. Every single soldier came back. Unprecedented. Why should you hate the Midianites? Why not make peace? 18, ki, because seirim heim lachem, because they are hateful and they harass you, binichleihem, with all their wiles, with all their ideas, asher niklu lachem, where they harmed you, brought tremendous harm to you, or beguiled you, al devar po'or, leading the children of Israel into the idolatry of po'or. As we're about to learn, this became a real problem, where the Jewish people began to worship po'or. The Midianite girls introduced them to it, but they were actually taken with it. And you had a whole po'or culture which Moshe had to battle. And it was not an easy thing. In fact, Moshe mentions this again and again as his downfall. So you have to declare war against Midian, because they, in an organized way, were out to destroy the spirituality and ultimately the existence of the Jewish people. V'yal devar, and because of this story of Cosbi, Bas Nasi Midian, Cosbi, the daughter of the prince or king of Midian, Achaisam, their own sister, Hamukah, who was slain Biyom HaMagef, on the day of the plague, Al Devar Peor, because of the story of Peor, you've got to go in and declare war against Midian. Ki tzorim heim lachem al Devar Peor, Rashi 18, Shivkiru b'nei Seyem. They offered up their daughters, liznus, to harlotry. Why? With only one reason. Why would someone send their own daughters into harlotry? It's not something a normal person does. Kidei lahateschem achar po'or, in order to cause them to sin after Peor. Yes, Moab, Leitziva Lahashmit. Moab is not included into this commandment. Ibnei Rus, because of Ruth the Moabite, Shoisa Asida Lotzis Mahem, was destined to come from them. Tidamrina Baba Kama, as we state in the Gemara Baba Kama, that Ruth the Moabite, who was the forebearer of King David, came about from Moab. Simply speaking also, Moab didn't send their daughters in to the extent that the Midianites did. Verse 1, and here we see an interesting phenomenon, that chapter, there is a paragraph in the middle of a verse. You see the pei after the third word. Vayihi acher hamagefa, it came to pass after the plague, paragraph. Yomer Hashem el Moshe, and God said to Moshe, V'el Elazar ben Aaron HaKohen, and to Elazar, son of Aaron, the Kohen, Lamor, saying, why is God speaking now to Elazar? Because Aaron died in last week's portion. This was after the first day of the month of Av. It was between Rosh Chodesh Av and the 7th of Adar, when Moshe dies. This is all in the 40th year. This can be compared to a parable, l'reya, to a shepherd. Shenichnasu ze'evim l'teich edrei. Wolves entered into the flock. V'horgu bohem, and the wolves attacked and took many sheep. So the shepherd, after the attack is fought off, counts them, leda, to ascertain. Minyan hanesores, how many surviving sheep there are. So here the commandment comes to count the children of Israel to see how many survived the plague. One interpretation. Davar achar, another interpretation, an additional meaning. Kishiyotzu mimitzrayim, when the children of Israel left Egypt, nimsirolei b'minyan, they were handed over to Moshe with a census, with a number, with a count. Achshav, now, shekorav lomus, Moshe is approaching his death. Lahachzir tzeinei, Moshe, so to speak, is about to return his flock to the master. Machziram b'minyan, he has to return them with a count. It's important also here to return them with a count. Verse 2, Se'u, take the census, as Reish Ko'adas B'nai Yisrael, of the heads of the entire congregation of Israel. Who should be counted? Ben Esrim Shana B'mayla, the males who are aged 20 and higher, B'veis Avesam, by their father's households, all those who can be drafted into the army. Kol Yetzei Tzava B'Yisrael, all those who go out to war in Israel. The lineage, the genealogy follows the father's tribe and not the mother's tribe. And this is an important rule in Jewish life. Religion, religious affiliation follows the mother. Tribal affiliation follows the father. So that if the mother is Jewish, the child is Jewish, it doesn't matter who the father is. If the father is from the tribe of Reuben or Shimon or any tribe, even if the father is not Jewish, the child is Jewish. Who is a Jew? Born of a Jewish mother. Yet, when it comes to tribal affiliation, which back then meant much more than tribal affiliation, because Israel was a grouping, a United States of 12 tribal states. So you needed to know which state you belonged to. Did you belong to Reuven or to Shimon or to Yehuda or to Binyamin? This followed the father's tribal affiliation. So the census was taken by the father's household. Verse 3. Moshe and Elazar the Kohen spoke with them in the plains of Moab. As they said when I was a kid in school, they said, if your mother is Jewish, you're Jewish. And if your father was a Cherokee, you're a Cherokee. And there's nothing you can do about it. Al Yarden Yerechai on the Jordan, on the plains of Jericho, Lamar, saying, if Les was here, he'd sing Cherokee people. Dibru ima malzeis, they spoke with him concerning this. Shetziva hamokim limneisam, where Hashem commanded that they be counted. Lamar, saying, Amru lahem, they said to them, Tzrichem atem limones mi ben esim shana v'mayla. You must now again be counted, age 20 and up, all those who are suitable to be drafted into the army. We're actually preparing for a war now. Kasher tziva, sheyehei minyona mi ben esim shana v'mayla. The count should be age 20 plus. Shenamar, as it says, Kel ha'ever al hapkudim, everyone that passes amongst them that are numbered. As he says in verse 4, Mi ben Esim Shana B'Mayla, age 20 and up, Kasher Tziva Hashem es Moshe b'nei Yisrael, exactly as God commands Moshe and the children of Israel, Hayetzim, those who come forth, Me'eretz Mitzrayim, from the land of Egypt, as we will learn, God willing, in tomorrow's portion, the census which took place, end of Chumash portion.
Jewish audio on Chabad.org.